got my water tonight in a mason jar. It
Hey,
it
we're
is
we're
it.
we're we're live.
Oh, good. Having some water. Trust me when I tell you, this is not alcohol. This is water.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Breaking Reality. Tonight we have Melvin Nix with us, and we're going to be continuing our discussion on what is energy. And tonight we are going to be getting into more on the topic of working with energy in tonight's discussion. So, Melvin, you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself for the folks that haven't met you yet and haven't seen you on the show? I know quite a few people already know who you are because you've been on here a couple of times and know you'll be back many more times. But if you just want to give us a brief little introduction.
Sure. First of all, I want to say thanks again, Josh, for allowing me another opportunity to be on Breaking Reality. It's just been great getting to know you and in front of you. Sincerely appreciate that, and just to really enjoy the talks that we've had. So first and foremost, I want to just say thank you, and looking forward to just continuing to put information out and whatever else the universe has for us to talk about. So thank you for that. And my name is Melvin Nix. To those of you who don't know me, I'm a spiritual teacher, and you can find my work on newyou.com. That's spelled Pneuyouu. I know that name sounds a little weird, but the word new, um, I took from the Greek translation of the word pneuma, which means spirit. So I teach a lot about how we can transform our lives through using our spirit, through understanding that we are spiritual beings. And a lot of the information that I share deals with how to connect to your spirit, how to get to know who you are, and how to be able to operate in the universe and be able to manifest things and bring change about in your life through an understanding that you are not a human being having a spiritual experience, but you are a spirit having an earthly experience. So that's about me, and love all things that deal with metaphysical topics and healing and holistic approaches to life, because I believe that especially nowadays with everything that's going on in the world, it's important that we take the time to find out who we are and that we learn how to not only integrate ourselves into the world, but that we can help others along. So that's a little bit about who I am, and feel free to look up any of them. If you ever have any questions or anything, drop me a note, send me a line, and I'd love to connect with
you. Excellent, excellent. So, where do you want to start off tonight's topic, this discussion?
I think one of the things, Josh, that would be very beneficial is just to kind of provoke, as far as with everything we've talked about, we started out talking about what energy really is, and then we got into the chakras and how to open the chakras up, and that really just great,
there was a brief lapse in the audio there, Melvin.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's cutting out on my end.
Okay.
I'm not really sure. So if it cuts out again, I'll let you know for sure.
All right. And we'll just keep it going. Those gremlins. Every time that we get this topic is probably going to help a lot of people. That's why the gremlins show, to kind of run a little bit of interference. So we'll just keep it going as best as we can. But I think we just with what we're talking about tonight, I don't know if the audience is familiar with actually feeling energy themselves. If they've actually done an exercise, they have actually felt energy for the first time. I don't know if I'm sure you have, Josh, but I'll do a little demonstration.
Okay.
So if you take your hands and you hold them together, just kind of rub them together a little bit. You don't have to rub them hard. You're not scrubbing. You're just kind of feeling your fingers. You're becoming aware of yourself. A lot of times in the world, we are conditioned to not being within our bodies. So we aren't familiar with just being in tune with us. So just rub your hands together for a couple of seconds like I'm doing here. And now, just slowly start pulling your hands apart and just hold them about right here. Now, if you've done this and you just focus and pay attention, you may feel a tingling sensation. You may feel heat. You may feel like there's an invisible ball there that you can kind of just hold in your hand. But if you do that, that'll get you used to feeling energy in your hands. We talked about the chakras, and we learned that we are constantly receiving an energy download from source. And with having our chakras cleared, you can begin to process and feel that energy. So if you haven't done it before, just take the time and just have like a little invisible ball here and see if you can feel that. Right now I'm feeling tingling sensations in my hands. But the reason why we're able to do that is because our hands actually have chakra points in them as well. And with tonight's topic, getting into how to work with energy, I think it's important to have that understanding, because fundamentally, we come into the world already connected. We come into the world already being in tune with the universe. And we learn how to get out of sync. We're taught how to get out of sync. We're schooled how to get out of sync, and we disconnect ourselves. But it's all about learning how to get right back in. When you're dealing with energy is very powerful. And when you really get into discussions like Reiki and things of that nature and healing, you want to be able to not only heal others, but there are times where, and having an understanding.
We just lost audio there again briefly, Melvin.
Okay.
You're back again now, but we lost it there for just a couple seconds.
Okay. So what I was saying was, when you start learning how to work with energy, not only can you heal others and be of service, but you can heal yourself. Those times that you have that headache, rather than running to get an aspirin, you can take some time, get into a meditative state, and give yourself some healing. So if you've never done that exercise before, I encourage you to take a moment and see that and begin to sense and become aware of what energy actually feels like.
Absolutely. So I know tonight you wanted to discuss Reiki, which that is an area I have very, very, very little knowledge in. So, and I may have a few questions for you on that one tonight.
Great. What I figured we could do, Josh, I can talk about Reiki, and I'll kind of open it up to deal with Kundalini, where I think we're going to switch it up a little bit, where you're more of a little bit of an expert on that than I am.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert. I have some knowledge on Kundalini Energies. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means. I have an understanding of them. We'll just see how this goes.
Okay, excellent. So when we talk about Reiki, the thing that I want you and the audience to think about the most, as with any spiritual topic, the thing that I think is the most beneficial thing to take from it all is learning how to integrate ourselves as a spirit, soul, and body unit. Because oftentimes we go through life and we have our bumps and our kinks, and we don't think about the fact that we are incredible beings. Like we are so physically minded that we don't think about the fact that we have a wonderful and amazing spirit, and we have an amazing mind. And if we ever figure out how to integrate them and operate as a whole, the things that we can do in the world will be amazing. So with Reiki, it's really about integrating yourself as a whole and being a channel that's clear for universal energy to flow through you, and you're just kind of a conduit. Remember how when we talked about energy the last time, Josh, I gave the illustration of I had my iPad and actually my iPod, and I had the cable.
Right.
And I was saying how that if I plugged it into the wall, how that the power flows through that cable and it hits that device and turns that device on. Well, in terms of Reiki, the power source is the universe, and you are the cable that power flows through, and your hands would be like that iPod. Your hands would be the not necessarily the conduit in a sense, but it would be the end point where that energy flows out, where that energy can be manipulated and it can move and it can be channeled. So
Okay.
yeah, so the word Reiki itself deals with universal life energy.
So your hands would be this part.
Exactly. Absolutely. And we don't often think about that, but check this out. What's the first thing that happens if you bump your knee onto something? Usually the first thing is ouch.
Right.
What's the second thing?
You feel the sensation, you feel the pain, you feel the response to it.
And how do we typically respond after we feel that pain?
Well, like you said.
You
reach for it, you grab for it, yeah.
Exactly. Oftentimes, if you had a good parent, if you fell on your bike or something, the first thing they would do is come over and touch the area. And it's interesting how that instinctually we feel that if something is hurt in our bodies, we touch the area. If the shoulder hurts, we'll put our hand on it and we'll rub it. We just by nature know how to do that. Well, when you learn Reiki, you become very intentional and you understand that you can channel that energy and work with the body. Now, one of the things that I also want to give out as a starting point is, as a Reiki practitioner, I've been practicing Reiki maybe 4 years now. You don't necessarily, you are not necessarily the healer, quote unquote. As a Reiki practitioner,
right,
you basically create a space for the person to heal themselves.
You're the conduit that allows the energy to flow through into them.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand that, because a lot of times when you have people who don't believe in the type of thing, they'll have in their mindset, well, this is just a bunch of pseudo.
I lost audio, Melvin.
Okay, let me know when you have me back.
You're back.
Okay. Oftentimes people who are the naysayers and the skeptics, they don't believe that, there's a possibility that we can connect to source and that we can touch things. But when you have the understanding that you're just a channel, it kind of removes that from your mind, because when you're in a Reiki session, you don't go into it thinking, well, I've got to do some kind of magic to be able to heal this person. It's more about, I'm going to get into a relaxed state and allow the energy to do its own work. Remember, I believe it was the second question that we had.
I lost
energy.
Okay, you're back again. It's just cutting out for a few moments at a time and back in. So I don't know what's going on.
Okay. Well, hopefully, I can just keep talking and.
I just don't want to miss any. I just don't want to miss any key points that you're trying to say.
Gotcha. Okay. With being a practitioner, you want to make sure that you are understanding that you don't have to be a guru. You don't have to try to make something happen. You're essentially just yielding to the universe and allowing the energy to flow, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So in Reiki, it's kind of like Qigong or Tai Chi. I know you're familiar with that, Josh, because you were martial. The movements that they do, it's about channeling energy. It's about moving and about flowing. That's one of the things that I love about when Bruce Lee made his statement about be water. He talked about how water, if you pour it into a cup, it becomes the cup.
Yep.
If you pour it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. And then he said it can flow or it can crash. And then he said, be water, my friend.
Absolutely.
What I took from that was he was explaining how that water basically takes the form of whatever it is, kind of presented with. And it doesn't fight against it. It just kind of naturally flows.
Right.
And as a Reiki practitioner, you become essentially that cup. And the water is the energy from the universe. And that energy just kind of flows. And you want to be able to channel that energy. You understand? So
Yeah.
with having that fundamental understanding of what you're doing and how it works, then I think that for the audience, if you decide to learn Reiki, that it'll just basically help you know what you're getting yourself into. And I think it's probably one of the best decisions I made, because in my life, when I went through a particular spiritual awakening, I learned so much at an accelerated rate, but there were still some things that I didn't understand when it came to energy. And when I had my first Reiki session done, the way that I felt was incredible. There was a sense of calmness, a sense of just being at one with everything, and a sense of peace that came over me from having this session done. And I was like, I've really got to learn and find out what this is all about. And so I found, actually, my wife had found a local Reiki master, because I was looking all over the place to take a course. And she found a Reiki master who was here locally in Charlotte. And I signed up for the Reiki 1 and 2 session. And after going through the first session of Reiki and getting a fundamental understanding, it was actually started by a Japanese monk who was a Christian at first. And I don't think he ever dismissed his Christian beliefs, because he was highly interested in healing with the hands. You know, in the Bible, and especially in the New Testament, in Jesus's ministry, he laid hands on a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And they got healed from him laying their hands on. And then in one instance, there was a lady who was sick. The Bible says she had an issue of blood. I'm not really sure what an issue of blood is, but she had this condition, and it was kind of like leprosy, where, you know, she could not be in the crowd. The people would banish her. And so she found a way to just crawl through the crowd, and she touched Jesus' clothes. She touched like the bottom of his clothes.
Yeah, it said
And
she
when
touched the hem of his garment.
Yeah. And when she did, she got healed. But the thing that I took from that story was what Jesus said. He didn't even see the lady at first. He felt the energy leave his body.
Right.
And she didn't touch his body. She touched his clothes.
He was so attuned to being a conduit for that divine energy that was flowing through him, that it was always coursing through him constantly, and he was a permanent conduit for it. And he was always open to allowing it to flow through. Holy cow, I got some crazy lighting going on right now.
I'm telling you, man, this topic is a good one.
Apparently the energy is just ebbing and flowing all over the place.
We have unlimited power tonight. So not from the dark side. But anyway, Master Yusui was his name. He became highly interested in healing through the touch because of what he understood about the ministry. So he went on like a spiritual journey, in a sense, where he did a lot of meditation, and he just had a spiritual awakening where he got, in a sense, and I know I'm condensing this, but he, in a sense, had a spiritual awakening to where Reiki was like a light switch.
Okay.
And when that happened, the Reiki, there are symbols involved in Reiki, and he began receiving these symbols and learning how to work with them. And so I believe he went into a mountain when he had this experience. And when he came down from the mountain, I believe the story goes he had bumped his toe or something, and he used Reiki and healed his toe. And so he began just teaching other people how to use this energy. And he developed students all over the world. And I believe his wife carried on his legacy after he passed. And so, you know, long story short, Reiki is a big thing now, and people are using it not only, you know, for themselves, but during the pandemic. If you know, you do a little bit of research, there were a lot of people Reiki healing for clients. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a degree. When you talk about the levels of Reiki, they're known as degrees, kind of like in martial arts, where you have, you know, first degree black belt and so forth. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but there's a certain degree of Reiki where you can heal a person and you don't have to be in the same room. You send that energy towards them, and they are able to receive that energy, and that energy knows exactly and will heal their body.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of people doing that. I worked with a gentleman once out in California, who was an energy healer, is what he, was just kind of generally classified as. Um, I would say probably Reiki is what he was doing, when he was working. But I mean, there was different things. I mean, there was, different massage techniques that was involved, and he was doing a oh, I have a friend who does it, and I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like acupuncture, but instead of using needles, they just use their fingers to hit pressure points.
Yes, acupressure.
Okay. And he
Yeah,
was doing stuff along that lines too, to open up different meridians and stuff, and channel the energy through the body in different ways.
yeah. When I got into Reiki, I started learning more about the energy, and it's fascinating to me because, you know, most of us don't understand that we're made on all those different levels. Where we actually have an energy body. I mean, you don't see it; it's invisible, but it can do things to your natural body when you know about meridians and you know about all those various points in your body and how they're all interconnected. And I think it's fascinating when you get into that and you start learning, how um, if you have a pain in your knee, that there are certain points that aren't even associated with your leg. That
Right.
if you touch those points in the right combination for the right amount of time, it knows exactly what to do to unlock the flow of energy. And
Right.
and the fascinating thing with those sciences, as I like to call it, is that it goes back to what we were saying, and I love when you brought up that episode of Avatar, because when you talked about that flowing river, think of the body that way, where usually if you have a dis-ease, there's usually a block of that force of life that can't
Right.
move, and it becomes stagnant. And when you get into the science of working with the energy body, you're able to release things at the roots, and that allows the physical body to come into alignment.
Right. And
So,
and in that episode of Avatar, where he was talking with the guru, he was talking about, well, the chakras and everything. And the guru was describing the chakras as these swirling pools of energy. And that when something gets into that pool that blocks up the flow of energy in that pool from one to the next, that you've got to clear it. And in there they was talking about the main seven chakras that's mainly known and talked about and discussed. But in the book that I have here, it says there's actually 88,000 chakras through the body.
yeah,
So that makes sense that, along those lines, if, something in your shoulder gets blocked, you're going to feel that, you know, somewhere else down along the arm and stuff and through that region. And, you know, so just with there being 88,000 chakras in the body, there's a lot of different areas that you got to be paying attention on, keeping things open and flowing and keeping that energy moving and going.
yeah. I don't know how familiar you are with sciatica, but I had that one time in my
Yep.
life,
Oh yeah.
and
Been, been there, done that.
yeah, I went to the doctor and I was like, Doc, I don't know what's going on, but from my knee down on my leg, I'm in excruciating pain, and I don't know where I hurt my knee. And he said, it's your back. And I
Yep.
said, what? I said, how is it that if I'm affecting my back, that my knee hurts and nothing else other than my knee and the body? And so he showed me this diagram of the nervous, and I think that's just a good illustration of, when you start getting into a broader sense of having an appreciation that we have multiple levels to who we are as a being. And when you start learning those different levels and how they all work together as a cohesive unit, that it's just fascinating what all you can do.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and not only us as humans, but like I give my cats, my oldest cat one time he was having issues with his stomach, and it was just really, bothering him, and you can tell what was going on. I said that backwards. I didn't really know what was going on. And so I just kind of brought him close and put my hands on some of his chakras, because animals have chakras. And I gave him about a 5-minute Reiki treatment for as long as he would allow me. He got better after that. So it's just really cool to see that you can use this stuff that we talk about. We have books, and we have the internet, and it's just a whole nother level of thinking when you can actually, as an individual, do something. When you can see miraculous things happen in your own personal life rather than just reading about it.
Right. When you can actually take the knowledge, put it into work, and see it in practice.
Yeah.
And
going
people,
back,
I was going to say, and some of the things that you touched on, people don't realize, like when you go to a massage therapist and stuff, they're doing a lot of things in the way that they're working with you. They're doing things similar to Reiki, and from what you've said, from what I know of massage therapy, they're working on opening up and channeling energy and flowing energy through the body and through the different meridians. I have a really good friend who went to school for massage therapy, and they study the meridians in the body intensely.
Yeah. A lot of people that I've been familiar with who practice Reiki have gone, and they just they call it healing modalities, but they just kind of add that to their bag of healing, And one thing that I think is also fascinating when it comes into, dealing with energy, working with Reiki and all that stuff, is when you incorporate crystals. I know we talked about, I believe the first talk where we did on energy, we talked about crystals carry a charge. They carry energy from the universe that's just naturally in them. They all have of those frequencies. And you can incorporate crystals to amplify the energy that you're working with when you're doing a Reiki session. So sometimes there'll be people who, I had a Reiki session done once where I the end of it because
what was that? You cut out for just a little bit.
After having my second Reiki treatment, I believe I had a foot massage. I believe it's called, I can never pronounce this right. It's either shiatsu, or if you know the word, you can say it, Josh.
I think you said it right. It's the deep tissue massage.
Yeah, but I learned that we had chakras in our feet as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, reflexology goes a lot into the pressure points and stuff in the feet. And to me, from the understanding, and I may be off on this, but those pressure points are chakra points, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe they are. Because, I've looked at maps and diagrams of them, and there's tons of them, and I believe they are chakras, because when you think about what a chakra is, it's basically just a energy center.
Yeah.
That is constantly receiving energy, and it's in motion all the time. So I believe that wholeheartedly. And a lot of people who go to certain Reiki practitioners already know that it may just be a situation to where, I just get the traditional Reiki treatment, but other times, depending on what a person, the Reiki master may use crystal, they may use aromatherapy, because there's healing energies in plants and different things like lavender and frankincense and things of that nature.
Oh,
and it's all
absolutely. Like when we get into talking about different plants and stuff, it's the terpenes that give you the smells and the taste and stuff, and the terpenes are a very, very medicinal part of the plant. So those smells have things that are involved in them. Those terpenes, when you're working with them, they've got a very strong, powerful healing factor to them.
Absolutely. And it's all about, again, learning how to integrate everything. So you may have a Reiki person that only works with
what?
With their hands.
Okay.
But then again, you may have a situation to where a person may be burning an incense and getting that aroma in the room first. And then sometimes they may do something like play binaural beats. I know we haven't really talked about that too much, but that's another thing that I do a lot. I listen to binaural beats every night to sleep.
Oh yeah. So for geo frequencies and binaural beats, yep.
Yeah. So sometimes during a Reiki session, depending on what the needs are, a Reiki practitioner may use something like binaural beats. They may use a tuning fork, and that's another sound manipulation of energy.
Yeah.
But they understand that those different frequency levels hit chakra points.
Oh yeah.
And they align those chakra points.
And you know, it's really important because, you know, each one of those chakra points is a pool of energy. Energy has a frequency it attunes to. Each one of those has a different frequency it attunes to. And actually had a guest on the show. I had him on back in the days when I was on Blog Talk Radio. He was on back on actually St. Patrick's Day of this year. His name is Shannon Harris, and he has a company called Audio Pharmacology. And he actually works with healing by using sound.
Nice.
Yeah, that's one of his main healing modalities. But he also does like the Qigong. Is that it?
Yeah, Qigong.
Yeah, he does Qigong, and he does a couple of different things with energy along that. But he works with sound with them simultaneously. You know, he has different instruments that he will use while he's doing these sessions with people who play music and stuff. And this gentleman just has a deep understanding of frequencies, vibrations, how they heal the body and everything. That's his specialty with it. And just absolutely an amazing guy. If you haven't checked out that episode, I would suggest watching it. It's with Shannon Harris is his name.
Okay. I'll definitely check out that link for sure. That reminds me of a time where I went to one of our local metaphysical bookstores, and there was like a men's group that they were, it was a local men's group where we had a meeting and we were talking about healing. And they had what they called a Tibetan bath. I don't know, have you heard of that, Josh?
The sound bath? Is that what you're talking about? Or
you know what a tuning bowl is?
Yeah.
Usually so imagine a tuning bowl that's large enough to stand in. So
oh, wow.
It was a pretty large tuning bowl. And the coolest thing that happened was he had each person stand in a tuning bowl, and I think I was the first. And so I stood there, and when he hit the sound, he called it a Tibetan sound bath. I believe that was the name of it. And he hit it one time, and then you could just feel the vibration from this bowl go up your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, "Is something going on with the left side of your back?" I said, "Absolutely it is." I never told him that when I walked into the room. And so he just kind of took a selenite crystal and kind of ran it up and down, and he hit the bowl again, and the sound was different than it was the first time, and my back had stopped hurting. I was blown away. Yeah.
That is definitely interesting.
Yeah. If that thing wasn't over $200, I probably would have bought it. But another individual who understood how to work with energy, but he used sound. What was that?
Who was that? You cut out again for just a brief second.
Oh, I was just saying that it was amazing to have worked with a person who, as you just mentioned, like Shannon, who understood how to work with sound vibration and frequencies to heal.
Oh, absolutely.
And I wasn't the only person. There were other people there, but it was just for him to give that demonstration, because we talked about energy a little bit that night. And I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating, where if you walk into a room and a person does not know, and you kind of go through that exercise and they can identify.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating. And oftentimes when you practice Reiki, what I learned from, my training is there's ways to elicit, for lack of a better word, what's going on with the person. And you do that on the level of intuition. There's various methods that different people do. For example, if you go into a Reiki session, usually you kind of have to fill out a form and give a little briefing, a brief description of kind of what's been going on, and the person works with you. But oftentimes when they take your form in, they have a little bit of a discussion with you, but then they put you on the massage table, or you may lay on the floor, whatever different facility may have. And the first thing that the person will do is to find out if your chakras are out of alignment. And there are various ways in which they do that. I've seen it done where a person will take a pendulum and they will essentially hold that pendulum over every chakra for a few moments. And the pendulum will spin depending on if your chakra is open, if it's moving slowly, or if it's closed off. That pendulum will indicate what that is. And so they'll basically take that and go from your crown and go all the way down to your root. And they can kind of figure out, what's been going on in that method. Then there's other times where, if a person's really tuned in, you walk into the room and you lay down on the floor and they just get into a meditative state and they can kind of tell where your chakras are. They can tell if they are in alignment or if you have a lot going on. And sometimes they'll just kind of have a discussion with you to figure out what's happening before they give you the treatment. So all that to say, it's just really amazing. And I hope that when we're done with this talk that people look into Reiki more. So with that being
honestly,
said,
at the very least, it's something I'm going to look deeper into and more into, because it's something that, it's always been talked about in the circles that I've been in and worked with. And it's one of those healing modalities that I've heard people, always bring up, but it's not one that I personally have necessarily experienced firsthand by going to a Reiki session. Like I said, I worked with that energy healer, and I believe some of what he was doing was some Reiki work or similar to Reiki work. But the just as a Reiki session, just a Reiki session, I've never had one.
okay.
So that's definitely something I think I'm going to look into.
Great.
I think I will look around and see if I can find someone around here and just at least get an experience of it under my belt. It may help me with some of the things I've got going on health wise and keep things in check a little bit better. And we'll see.
I'll have to definitely do a distance healing session for you.
That would be interesting when we've got some free time and you can do so. I know you've been absolutely swamped and busy lately.
Yeah, man, time has been getting away from me, but hopefully things will, so that we can be sure and get that Reiki session in.
Absolutely.
But since we're talking about that, like I was explaining, depending on where you go, as far as setting expectations for a Reiki session, you'll go in and you either fill out an online form, or depending on who the person, I'll have a conversation with them. You want to have a form, and a good Reiki practitioner will be reputable. They'll make sure that they are licensed and bonded and have that kind of. So I encourage people to look for that if they go, so that you're not dealing with, when you deal with different healers, people are different and they do different things, and I'm not judging anyone. So you're like, where, you meet someone and they may do, sometimes people don't explain things. I like to talk and explain things so that you can set expectations, because if a person has never heard of Reiki and they just go out of curiosity and say, okay, I'm going to go get a Reiki, person comes out burning sage and ringing tuning forks, and they're like, what in the world have I got myself into? So, I like to explain things so that if you have an understanding, it can help you to relax.
Oh, yeah.
And that's part of it, because we get so stressed out in life, and we don't take a moment to relax and reconnect. And I think when you go, especially like if you go to the doctor, a lot of times people go,
I was going to say you cut out when you said it, when you go to the doctor.
Yeah, when you go to the doctor, I forgot what they call it, but your blood pressure. And, I think, gosh, I don't remember what it's called, but that situation where you're already stressed by the fact that you have, so when you get into more holistic things, the aim is to get more relaxed. It's to get more calm, get more in tune.
Right.
And so when the Reiki practitioner gets the information, they'll have a little bit of a talk with you and more than likely set expectations. For example, they'll talk about how that they are just a channel, that they are not going to heal you. I'm sure we all have seen certain people, and I'm not going to name names, but if you've ever seen televangelists and,
Benny Hinn.
You see that. Josh named names, I didn't. But anyway,
hey, I have no problems naming names on some of that stuff. If you're going to tell me that you're going to just wave your coat around and heal people, it's one of those ones that I struggled with that particular modality of things for a long time, because to me, I'm calling it out right here. I'm going to do this. I tried not to do this too much, but I'm going to call it out right here. If that guy is such a skilled healer, if the Lord works through him the way he says he does, why is he doing coliseums and not hospitals? Well,
you said it. Especially during the pandemic, I didn't really see or hear much of the quote unquote healing ministries being involved with, COVID. And I heard some of them talk about COVID, but I don't know of many situations where they actually went into COVID units to help some people. And it's a travesty, but, hopefully with knowledge, people will kind of walk away from those types of things. That's why we're doing what we're doing, to help people get some real help, and not get into the spooky hocus.
And there is an aspect of it that modern science, modern medicine looks at things like energy healing and stuff, and for the most part they look at it with extreme skepticism, and it's kind of a taboo topic and factor to be discussing with doctors. Most of them don't have a belief in it because they don't see the hard science in it.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough at one point when I was still in the church doing that, I got to know a doctor who was going to the church that I was going to. And I was kind of on my way out of that because I started questioning a whole lot of stuff. And I had a conversation with him about beliefs. And he introduced me to the placebo effect, which I kind of heard about, but wasn't too familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained what that all was to me, and it made sense, because at the end of the day, I could believe that, I'm looking for something quick here. I could believe that there's power in this stapler, and if I believe that enough, I can hold this staple and my body will, this stapler, and my body will receive something from it.
Absolutely.
And that's called the placebo effect.
Right.
Where
in the placebo studies, it was where they was giving actual medication to one group of people, and then they were giving a sugar pill to the other group of people, and they didn't tell the people that they were giving them a sugar pill, and they believed that they was actually getting the same medication that the other group of people was getting, and the belief that that medication was healing the other group, that it would heal them as well, was so strong that a large, I don't know the exact percentages and numbers of it, but there was a large percentage of the placebo group that believed that they were being healed by that medication as well. And they were actually just getting nothing more than a sugar pill.
And I think that is proof positive, Josh, of the existence and the reality of what we're talking about. Because at the end of the day, I think the placebo effect is nothing more than you getting out of the way, getting thinking and unbelief out of the way to allow source to do its job.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. When in 2019, I had a I had a I'll just go into this. I had a cyst form on my inner left thigh, and instead of coming out like most skin cysts would, this one bored in. I wasn't aware it was there. It formed into an abscess and ruptured, and it wasn't until it ruptured that I was even aware that it was there, because that's when it started
wow.
causing me problems because
Okay.
of the infection being released into my body. Ended up going into the hospital. I had developed sepsis and cellulitis. It was very severe. At first, I thought it was the symptoms that I was having. I thought were just a general autoimmune response because of some of my autoimmune disorders that I've got. And so I didn't go to the hospital because I just think, oh, this will be over in a couple of days. It's just autoimmune. Well, it hit a point where I realized it wasn't. Got to the hospital and it was pretty bad off. They ended up having to go
Oh,
in and do surgery, and they took a significant chunk out of my thigh.
wow.
They had to go in and basically cut it out and get all that infection that was in that tissue out, and that's the only way they could get it. They had given me a barrage of heavy antibiotics to the point where they couldn't keep an IV in my veins because my veins were blowing out, because the antibiotics were so strong they were causing problems with my veins. So
Wow.
they had to give me a PICC line, which is basically like an IV that goes in through your arm and comes out right over top of your heart. And that's how they would deliver medications and antibiotics and everything to me. But
Wow.
during that time, when it came time for recovery, I went to the wound care doctor that was seeing the wound, and it was a large wound, and they had to let it heal from the inside out. So they couldn't sew it shut like you would normally a normal surgical wound. They told me that it was going to take at this. I had the surgery in 2019 on June 28th. July 4th, I was transferred to a basically a nursing home, a long term recovery rehabilitation facility, and I was told that by the wound care doctor that I saw the following week that I would not be out of that facility until at least after the holidays. That it was going to take at least that long for it to heal up for them to move me from that facility into home health care, home recovery. And so I said, all right, if that's what you think, cool. I know better. I'll be out of there by then. I'll be home by then. That was my goal. In my mind, I said, I'm going to be home by the holidays. I'm not going to be celebrating the holidays stuck in this place. I'm going to be there. So um, I got into doing several different things to working with the healing in my own body. One of the things that I done was, of course, binaural beats and solfeggio frequencies that were designed to help increase the healing of tissue and fight infection and stuff in the body. That was part of what I was doing. But the other thing I done, and this came from my mentor, Demian, who's been on the show several times, Demian Gover. Demian told me, he said, speak to your body, talk to your body, tell your body
Wow.
what to do, speak to it on a cellular level, speak to the cells of what they need to do to heal your body, and your body will respond. And I would do this. I
Nice.
would go into a meditative state for hours a day. I mean, I'm laying in this, basically in this nursing home in a bed. I can't really get up a whole lot. They get me up for a few hours a day, move me around and stuff. Um, and back and forth to the restroom, stuff like that. But for the most part, I was laid up in this bed. And so I would spend hours in a meditative state working on this. To cut the story short, I left that facility at the end of October, or mid to end October, and I was declared fully healed on December 3rd of that year.
That's
Where
awesome.
where they were saying that I would be lucky to even be out of that facility by January 1st. So, when you learn how to work with your body and talk with your body and learn the different things that will work with it, you can help yourself heal and heal quicker and faster than what even modern medical science. Now, I will tell you, the doctors that were involved in my care done a lot to help with the recovery as fast as it was, but they were even shocked and surprised I healed so fast.
Wow.
They were extremely shocked and surprised I healed so fast. And funny enough, earlier this year I had to go back to the same wound care doctor. I had another injury that I needed treatment for, and it wasn't bad, but they wanted me under his care just to make sure that it healed properly. And I healed super quick with it. And he goes, "What is it with you that you heal so fast?" And I'm like, "I could sit down and tell you, but you'd probably think I'm crazy."
See, isn't that the great thing about like the stuff that we know and the stuff that we're talking about, and that we are? I'll speak for myself. It's been the challenge for me is making it my go-to like immediate, like
Yeah,
conditioning to where the first instinct that I have is if something goes left, to use what I know. There are times that I do that, and then there are times that I wake up and realize, that okay, I got the solution to this in my own hands, in my own mind. If I
right,
just talk to myself, like you said, because when you think about the body, you don't have to tell the body to form a scab if you have a cut. It knows what to do. It's
right.
very intelligent at the cellular level. So when you are speaking to the cells in your body, the body is hearing you and working with you. Just like when you have negative self-talk and you talk about how bad things are, your cells hear that and go, well, I guess
Yeah.
you know,
And the same thing is like when you get anxious or anxiety or panicked with something as well. Um I mean it's been no mystery or anything that I've been dealing with an abdominal hernia for a while, and I'm working with a surgeon to get it fixed. He wants me to drop some weight before the surgery and stuff. And last week I had a week from hell with it. It just was one of those times where it was coming out. It was bothering me. I ended up in the emergency room 3 different times with it last week. With Sunday being the absolute worst. I was really, really bad off with it on Sunday. My pain levels were spiking really bad. It was giving me extreme nausea. I was getting, I would get into where I was doing dry heaves and stuff, which is making everything worse because it's pushing on that area, and it's making everything worse. It's making the pain level spike even higher. And I kind of got into a bad cycle of that, and I had to get to the emergency room. I had to get things to get that nausea under control and to get those pain levels under control so I could get it taken care of. And I got in there, and they finally got everything taken care of, medication wise, to get that stopped. And then we had to reduce it, so get everything back in place where it was supposed to be. And at first I was having a little troubles because I was still in an anxiety state from that pain cycle I was in.
sure.
And it took me a little bit, and what I had to do was I had to calm down. I had to start focusing on my breathing. I had to do breathing techniques and really start to control my breathing. And like you said earlier, took my hands. And to get everything back in place, you kind of place gentle pressure on the area. But as I was doing the pressure, I was also focusing energy through my hands into that area to work on it. And I've done that with different things before, bruises and stuff. I'll heal bruises by placing my hand over them and working energy through them and massaging them and working through stuff like that. But it was bad enough at one point in time that the doctor had went and got the emergency room doctor had already contacted the on-call surgeon.
Wow.
And they were consulting with him about if there was any other things that they knew that could reduce it, or if this was one of those situations of there was going to have to be an emergency surgery to repair this right then and there. Funny enough, as I'm laying in there and I'm laying in the emergency room, and I'm all medicated up and everything. I'm finally relaxed out enough, and I'm focusing in on my breathing techniques, and I'm meditating, and I'm focusing on trying to get everything taken care of. The lights are off in there and stuff, and I'm just trying to focus everything out, not listening to the other things that's going on in the emergency room and stuff. And the door's closed, of course, in my room and stuff, but you can still hear things that are going on. So I'm trying to just block all that out and just focus on what I need to. And I would say probably about 2 minutes before the surgeon walked into the room to discuss emergency surgery with me, everything just went right back into place.
Wow. That's so awesome.
Yeah. And it was a point that if I had stayed in a panic state, that wouldn't have happened. Because I would not have been able to relax my body enough to be able to get things taken care of how I needed to. But I was able to relax, to focus, to channel energy, to talk to my body, to have a discussion with it of, hey, listen, we got this going on and we don't want to make this worse, all right? So, but
that's great.
And I think that's an important thing that a lot of people don't realize when you're dealing with some things is the way that you talk to yourself, that inner dialogue that you have with yourself really does affect how your body reacts.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, when you were, I remembered, I forgot what documentary that I heard this concept of what NASA scientists call visual motor rehearsal. I don't remember where I first heard the term, but I looked into it after the term. And essentially they learned how that the mind and the body are so interconnected and work together that, if a person can see it in their mind truly, we've all heard the cliche, you have to see it to believe it, or however that goes. Or if you see it in your mind first, then you can have it in reality. Mm-hmm. Well, they did actual experiments, kind of like this placebo effect in a sense, where they had two study groups. And one, I believe they were playing the piano. So they had one group that physically played the piano for a certain amount of time to get better. Then they had another group that all they did was get into a meditative state and visualize playing the piano for the same amount of time. And what they found out was the group that visualized played better to actually. And the fascinating thing about it was they discovered that the mind doesn't understand the difference between what's an actual experience and that you're having an imagined experience, because you are essentially using the same hardware. The same parts of your brain doesn't know if you're touching an actual key or when you're seeing it in your mind's eye, it doesn't distinguish the difference. And it triggers the same motor responses. So your muscle memory and all of those things. And all you're doing is just visualizing it. So when you're dealing with, healing and things of that nature, if you can always keep that in mind, that if you get your mind in alignment first, the body already knows what to do. It already comes with an intelligence of how to heal itself.
Right.
And even with
it's like the whole concept of mind over matter.
Yeah, and Reiki falls right in alignment with that, because when a practitioner is using Reiki, they are not doing something to you. They are allowing that energy to flow. And oftentimes, let's say that you walk into a Reiki practitioner and you say something like, I'm really stressed out and I'm having a lot of anxiety. Well, that person, being just a channel, will do the Reiki session, but that energy will come into your body, will come into your chakra. And let's say that you have an issue going on with your heart, or you have something going on with your kidneys. That energy goes to those areas too. Even if the person doesn't know everything that's going on, the energy does know.
Right.
And so when you get into that session and that energy begins to flow, it essentially hits the areas that need to be fixed. So I think that's great. And to anyone who's never had a Reiki, please go get that done and just find out for yourself what it's like. But getting back to when you have like a Reiki session, you'll go in, person will do what they call scanning your chakras, where they will either intuitively do it or pendulum, find out where your chakras are. And what they typically do is they'll start at the crown, because with Reiki treatment, you're using your hands and you're being universal energy to flow. And they will start at the crown of your head, and there's different hand positions that come along with Reiki, and there's various ways in which you learn to hold your, and there's times where you may not physically touch the person at all. There may be times you, but there's a particular way in which you do it, and you get into a state of mind to where your intention is just to allow the healing to flow, and that's it. You're not trying to conjure up anything. You're not casting magical circles. You're not doing spell work. Not to make light of those things, but just to talk about this. You essentially get into the state of mind to allow yourself to be the channel for, and you put your hands in the various positions, and that energy does its work. And you go from the crown chakra to the third eye, and you just go all the way down. And sometimes, if the practitioner is really attuned, they may take more time with one chakra than the other, or they may go back to one. It just really depends on feeling during that session, because a good Reiki practitioner will get into alignment with their client. It's not about, well, this guy just sent him on out his way with a bill. It's more about getting in tune, getting in alignment. And the flip side of that is you have to know how to ground yourself, because you are interacting with the person. And not only are you giving out energy, but you are receiving the energy that they're bringing. There's an energy exchange that occurs during a Reiki session. So once you come out of that, you have to ground. You have to find a way in which to get that energy off you, just like, modalities when they talk about doing energy work, like even in shamanic practice, where they'll just kind of wave the energy around. It's about clearing that energy again and clearing yourself as a channel. So do you have any questions at this point, Josh, or does anyone else have any?
I don't have any questions at this point. I think that you've probably covered this pretty well. But yeah, so
if there aren't any questions, then I'll get into the 3 degrees that a person can get when they are learning how. So we covered like what happens in a Reiki session.
Right.
Now, when you go to learn Reiki, it's a different situation where there's people that have programs online. Based on my.
Yeah, I heard programs online, and then you cut out.
Okay, there are programs online where you can learn, but I encourage people to go the route of finding a person. I know that COVID has kind of, but hopefully when things kind of clear up, when we can get back out into the world, that you can find a Reiki master and sit in a session with a person. The thing about doing that is not only do they, for example, when you go to do your first degree, that's what they call it, the first degree. Essentially, you learn Reiki history, kind of like what we talked about,
Right.
and then you learn basically the hand positions and how to turn the Reiki master does what's called attunement. And what that means is they become a conduit that activates the kind of like turning the Reiki on that's within, if that makes sense. They kind of activate the chakra points within you to be able to receive it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so when you go through the first attunement, you learn the hand positions, you learn about how to feel energy, and you learn basically how to work with yourself. It's self-care. So in the first degree, once you have that attunement, you're highly encouraged to go home and practice daily, the different hand positions, and to just make Reiki second nature, to where in the issue as an individual that you learn to heal yourself. Okay. The second degree of Reiki is a different attunement where you learn how to not only heal yourself, but you begin learning how to heal other people. And with that comes understanding, first and foremost, you always want to get a person's permission. You
Right.
never want to do this kind of work without getting the permission, because it's just kind of like in other spiritual practices, it's just kind of like a moral thing, an ethical thing.
Well,
Where,
yeah, I mean, in my show with Liz Foy, we was discussing energetic boundaries, and so I mean it goes along those lines. I mean, you don't want to start messing with someone. I mean, you wouldn't walk up and just give a total complete stranger a hug without asking their permission first. So you don't want to just, basically be doing the same thing with people of violating their space without permission.
Exactly. And so when you understand that and you get that particular attunement, what happens is once you get permission from a person, and usually when you do, there is a group that's typically there, and you practice with another person. And so you get the attunement from the Reiki master, and they essentially show you how to focus that energy. And that's when you start learning about the first symbol of Reiki, which is called the power symbol. And it's kind of like the activating switch. And you learn about those symbols, and the symbols inherently don't have. It's kind of like,
you said the symbols don't what?
They don't necessarily have power in a sense. It's more about it's a point of focus of channeling the energy in your mind, and it's how you learn to direct and cause that energy to flow. So in the second degree of Reiki, you start learning about the symbols. So you learn about the power symbol first. It's kind of like the activating power, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so after you learn about that one, you also learn about the emotional and mental symbol that you can utilize when you're doing Reiki. Because in the second degree, when you're working with other people, you can learn how to come in tune with and begin to heal emotional issues and things of that nature. Now, I'm not saying
you cut out again.
I'm saying that when you start getting to the emotional aspect of I'm giving a disclaimer that you should never, if a person has mental issues and they need to, don't just go to Reiki, go and get the help that you need.
Right.
But Reiki can assist with mental aspects and emotional aspects. Those are things that you in the second degree of Reiki. And the other symbol that you learn in the second, so there's three symbols. The third one deals with distance. And that's when you understand how source energy knows no barriers of time and space. And if you come into attunement and alignment with that, you can send that energy out, and that energy can heal a person who's not present with you. So in the second degree, you learn how to operate with those symbols, and you learn how to use on another person. Okay. The third degree of Reiki is where you learn a couple of more symbols, but then you learn how to teach and how to attune another person. So at that point, you can have a student come in, and if they want to learn about Reiki, you can take them through the process of attunement, where the Reiki master will usually go through a ceremony, and it's quite amazing to experience. That's why I totally advocate doing it in person. And when you go through this experience, this ceremony where the Reiki master puts the symbols into your aura, in a sense, and activates them and attunes you to be able to go out and do Reiki for you. So those are the 3 degrees. I know in some systems there, but I learned the 3 degrees, and usually when you have the 3rd degree, you consider the because you're able to teach and you're able to do another. And so when you learn these things and you get into the practice, it's amazing what begins to happen, because I found that my intuition just kind of peaked in a sense. And I think it's because the energy turned on and was allowed to flow.
Right.
And I believe that one of my first Kundalini awakenings.
I was about ready to say this kind of ties right into Kundalini.
Yeah, I believe one of those occurred after I had my 3rd attunement. And it wasn't something that I tried to do, but I noticed the difference in me, the difference in intuition. That's when I started having synchronicity. I started seeing number patterns like 1111,
and you cut out again.
That's when I started having the synchronicities kind of turn on in my life. And then not only was I seeing number patterns, but it just seemed like when I needed to get information from source, I would get these downloads that I knew were not coming from the information would just be as if you were telling me, Melvin, right, and give me an entire outline, and I'm just basically sitting there listening to this thing happen. And I believe that going through that process of getting my attunement opened me up, opened my chakras up to allow that Kundalini energy to flow. And so I know that part of what we're going to be talking about is Kundalini, and maybe this is kind of where that aspect of talk. But I believe, to sum up Reiki, that if you haven't done it, go and have the experience for yourself. And I totally suggest that if you're serious about it, go and get an attunement from a Reiki master.
Absolutely. This definitely sounds like something I want to check out for sure. I think it just kind of goes in along the lines of a lot of different things that I've worked with and things that I understand. And, now that we're shifting over to some of the discussion, sorry guys, I picked up Tanner there for a little bit. He was in his crate and he had all kinds of fuzz over him. So now I have all kinds of fuzz all over me.
You sure that's not from your beard, Josh?
No, the beard's nice. It's been brushed out. It's been cleaned. It's been washed. It's all good. It's not beard fuzz. It's Tanner fuzz. But when we get into talking about Kundalini energies and the Kundalini awakening, what we're talking about is the way the energies start to move through the chakras, and there's a difference in just your energy flowing and then the Kundalini energies flowing. We showed the picture before. I'll pull it up again here real quick. Just give me a second to grab the book. But it shows the picture here of the 2 serpents moving through the chakras and the spiraling crossing pattern is what is represented. That's a representation of the Kundalini energies and how the Kundalini energies rise through the body. And and the Kundalini energies are the term Kundalini and this discussion comes from the Hindu beliefs, and it's the yogis. It's what they work with when they're working with aligning their chakras and bringing up their energies. And as you work with these things, you when you get a Kundalini awakening, like what you was talking about, that's where you open up the pathway to be able to bring those energies all the way up to your crown chakra and beyond. And moving these energies through your body and allowing these energies to flow through your body properly. And the two snakes there are representations of the masculine and the feminine energies that are represented within the body. And those energies in harmony moving through. And that's the difference between just being like, okay, my chakras are opening, things are flowing. And then having that masculine and that feminine energy in harmony and in unison flowing in and through the body with the Kundalini awakening. And guys, by no means am I an expert on Kundalini. I don't claim to be. I'm very much a novice on this, but it is something that I am very, very interested in.
I mean, I know, Josh, that you and I kind of talked about this off camera a little bit. When I had, I it's funny in my life. It's kind of like I will, before I started really getting into becoming a more spiritual person, I would kind of accidentally bump it, and then when it would happen, like, holy crap, what was that all about? And I go look, and that's when I started understanding some things and digging a little. Because I believe the first time that I had a Kundalini awakening came at a very bad time in my life, where I was going through a lot of stuff, and I was just really stressed out. And for whatever reason, I was able to go by the water or something earlier on that day, and later that night, it felt like something went through me, and all I can describe as, I've told people this before, it's kind of like the Incredible Hulk just coming and sitting and living inside of your body. It's like this incredible feeling of being empowered, mm-hmm. and having energy and just being strong. That's the best way I could say it. It just came, and I just felt so like, the best way I can describe it is like being the Incredible Hulk. When you see him, as Bruce Banner, he's just this little doctor, kind of a nerdy dude, right. But then when he's this massively and that's kind of what it felt like.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that is kind of like what a Kundalini awakening is. And it's coming into the full realization of those energies and those powers within you and them activating. And people will describe it in many different ways. Some people will say it'll feel like electricity is moving up through their spine, because that's the path that it moves. It moves up and down that central column of your body, and but at the same time, some people, if they have a Kundalini awakening and they are not ready for it, it can also throw them into a tailspin. There's been people that said that, they've had a Kundalini awakening and it's triggered off a severe depressive episode, or they've just, kind of not known what to do with this. And it can cause them to go into, maybe a manic phase or things along those lines, because they're not prepared to handle this. So if you're working on the Kundalini energy and you're working on the Kundalini awakening, I would suggest finding someone to talk to that has some knowledge and some skill with this to help work you through it. But if you just happen to have one, on your own through some of the work that you're doing, by all means, get in there, study, read, learn, try to get an understanding to grasp it and to get a control of it. But for me, I've had the Kundalini awakening and the Kundalini energies, and it goes back into martial arts for me, where I first got it. You know,
Okay.
we would study in martial arts, and I study one of the internal styles of martial arts that works with chi, which was Xing Yi Chen. And in Xing Yi, we would work with first off, we worked everything off of the center column. You know, a lot of martial arts will stand, you know, you'll stand in that kind of side stance. We didn't. We stood kind of squared off, and we worked everything off of the center. Everything pivots off of that center. And
That's
so
interesting.
and so that's how we worked. And it's because we everything for us flowed off of that center. That was our pivot point. You know, we would move and rotate off of that all the time. But that's also where the strength of all of our power and all of our energy came from when we would move for an attack, or if we was doing, you know, block or defense. The strength to be able to block a really hard attack came from the way we worked off of that center line.
Judge, I have a question about that. Like, I understand that with Kundalini, when you're working on,
I just lost you. You said when you're working with Kundalini, then I lost you at that.
okay, and making that energy rise up,
Right.
that there's certain breathing that you can do. So I'm curious at what type did you do in that particular martial art?
Um, I mean, we just really controlled breath work. It was a lot of the 5-5-5 breathing, you know. But you can't really stay with a 5-5-5 when you're in an active combat. Um, you know, you're moving around a lot. Your energies are coming up. Your, you know, adrenaline is kicking in and everything else. But the main thing that we would do is a focused, controlled breathing. We would always keep control of our breathing. We would never allow ourselves to get out of that concentration of our breath work. That's where the majority of everything came from. Because we had to maintain, if we lost control of our breath, we lost control of our body.
Yeah.
You know, so we had to maintain breath work. And people have heard me talk about this over and over and over and over again on the show, and they will again and again and again. Breath work is critical to everything. When you start working with meditation, your breathing is critical. When you start working with energies, your breathing is critical. You know, and controlling that and making sure that you're focused on it. It's when you're working on focusing your energies and everything else, and you're focused on your breath work, it makes you more present in the here and now. It's really a mindfulness technique that brings you into that moment exactly then and there.
In my experience, what I think is a key thing to breath work, and I think it's great that you talk about that the most, is we have to always keep in mind when we look at the definition
The definition of what?
of the words that we use, like spirit and
Right.
chi and ki, all of that stuff at the end of the day means breath
Yeah.
and vital life force. It is what keeps us alive. You know, when it's interesting when you think of the word inspire or expire. What does that really mean? When you are inspired, that word means breath. But you know, it's associated with kind of getting a breath of creativity.
Right.
It's you're being inspired, but you're really dealing with breathing,
Right.
you know. And I think that breathing opens up your mind and open up your body in ways that nothing else can, because you're literally working at the level of your spirit when you are intentionally breathing.
Well, I mean, think about what happens when you breathe. When you inhale, you're pulling oxygen into your body. The oxygen floods through your lungs and then into your blood, and through your blood throughout the rest of your body, into your muscles and into your brain. And that oxygen is what all that really needs to be able to function at the utmost highest levels. And it's, you know, we can go days without food. We can go days without sleep. We can go days without water, but you can't go more than minutes without oxygen.
Not at all. Not at all. And
So, I mean, when you really think about what really makes this machine work, the first key factor is breath and breathing.
Yeah,
And the heart pumps to move blood, but that blood is moving oxygen.
that's right.
So
And I think it's interesting. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say we have to keep that breath work going because that's the life force that goes through us.
Yeah, and getting back to, like with Kundalini and with the chakras, they all work together. And, from my understanding of Kundalini, it's symbolic of, the serpent energies that are down near the diaphragm. And so when you are breathing intentionally and visualizing making that energy, that's kind of like that masculine and feminine serpent coming up your spinal cord.
Yeah.
You are taking in that breath and you are
Well,
allowing that energy.
that's exactly like when I'm focusing on rising my Kundalini energies through my chakras, it is what drives that is my breath work.
Yeah.
It is I just got to chill down my spine for a minute.
You having
But
it
it
awaken
is
you
my
right here
breath
and right
work.
now.
I'll breathe in, I'll go hold it, breathe out. And then as I start to take the next breath in, the deep breath, I pull those energies up from the base of the spine and I'm pulling them up through the chakras. So each time I do that breath work, that's what I'm pulling those energies in. And when I'm doing plant medicine work, and I'm really starting to get into the points where the medicine's really starting to flow within my body, and especially when I'm working with ayahuasca, as I'm laying there and I feel it because I can feel it rising for me, and it's probably different for everyone, but for me, when I can feel the effects of the ayahuasca coming on, I literally feel it from the bottom of my feet and through my feet and up my legs, and I feel the energy rising up from there, and then I start to kind of feel it coming in through my hands and my arms, and everything's moving towards the core
Yeah.
from the extremities, and then it kind of comes on up through the core and into the head as everything is coming together. But as soon as I start feeling those energies flowing in when the medicine's starting to take hold, I really, really get deep, deep, deep into the breath work. And that's what I'm doing is I'm working on pulling those Kundalini energies in to activate those Kundalini energies to come into alignment with that plant medicine that's in my body at that point in time, so that I can open up all those chakras, as I can pull those energies through those chakras and pull them up, through, everything, pull it up, through the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, into the third eye, and then out through the crown, you know, and I'm focusing on that. I'm taking those deep breaths, and I'm taking those long deep breaths, at least a 5 count, sometimes 7 count, or even longer. Then
Yeah.
I'm holding them, just letting that oxygen just sit in there and get saturated instead of just breathing it right back out. Letting that hold in the lungs so it gets into the blood system and really gets out. And then I exhale, and I exhale really, really long exhale, and getting all that um, carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide and all that stuff that comes out, getting all that stuff, everything that you got to purge out, purging it out, getting it out of the lungs, getting it all out, and then deep breath in again, pull in all that oxygen, hold it, and then breathe out. And like I said, each time I take that deep breath in, I pull those energies up. I'm focusing on them. I can feel them move up through my spine, And I can also, and as I'm doing this, I'm visualizing it. I'm focusing in my mind as I take this breath in. I'm pulling these energies up, and I can feel these energies moving simultaneously as I'm doing this. It's all describing it sounds a little strange, but it's all one process that's happening simultaneously for me as I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm actively drawing these energies up. And I do this during my meditations too, not just when I'm working with plant energies. I do this during my meditations. And I pull everything up, through the chakras up to the third eye, activate the third eye, and then out through the crown to just connect with the divine. And then I continue to sit in that space and keep that energy level up. I keep basically I keep pulling that energy up and through the body, and taking it out through the crown, and I'm maintaining that breathing cycle. It's a very focused breathing. It keeps me mindful. It keeps me in that space of being present in the here and now. And at the same time, you've got an awareness of everything that's around you, of your body, of what's going on, but yet you can also clear your mind out, where you can really open yourself up to being able to receive things from spirit.
Yeah.
And as you're taking that breath in, like you said, it's spirit. As you're taking spirit in and allowing it to soak into your body by holding it in the lungs and allowing it to saturate through your body, and then taking that energy that's there and rising it back up and out through the crown chakra, which releases it back out into the universe.
I think the thing that's fascinating about that, Josh, as I'm hearing you, is I'm having a memory of what I think was associated with when I've had a Kundalini awakening was, and I know this is a really can of worms that I don't want to open because I'm nowhere near an expert on this topic, but astral projection. I had an experience. I've had several since, but the first one that I had, I believe, came after. And the thing that was amazing, I've always heard that we all kind of do it, but there are people who, and I'm one of them, where I've been fortunate enough to go through the phases of it. And it's quite fascinating because you learn. It's interesting that when you relax the body, what all the spirit does. So I've since learned you have more of a control of that kind of an experience when you're able to body and mind to.
And what was that you cut out there for a second again?
To get the body and the mind to be totally relaxed.
Oh yeah. Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Like I've had a couple of sessions with working with ayahuasca where, the best sessions for me with working with I'm totally completely relaxed going into them. I try to spend time meditating even before I take the medicine. Before I consume, I spend time in prayer and meditation. But I've had a couple of sessions where, some things have went a little crazy, like right after I've consumed or something. And, whether it's, at one point in time, I was in a place where my session got interrupted by someone, like right after, and it was out of my control, and it was, an interruption, and I was just like, okay, all right, I got to deal with this, but I got to deal with this quickly because I'm not going to be able to deal with much for very long because, I've got something going on right now, okay?
Josh has left the building or about to leave.
Exactly. And honestly, that session was not as deep. And I think part of that was because of some of the, not like as anxiety as in an anxiety attack or anything, but some of the anxieties that came in just because I got interrupted out of that really calm meditative state of something that I had to deal with right then and there. And then wasn't able to necessarily drop back down into that state like I was before. And so I didn't get the full effects of everything like I probably normally would have.
Wow.
And I think it's because I wasn't able to get my body to relax out because I had just some tension that was residually hanging in there because of things that had went on,
Yeah.
of things that some had happened. One of the times, one of the people, when I was working with some plant medicines, I had a sitter sitting with me, and for some reason, I have no idea why, this person decided out of the blue that they was going to play some of this just most screeching, horrible, crappy music ever. It literally sounded like car wrecks and shattering glass and like crashing metal and stuff like that. It was just like this really horrible sounding stuff. And I told him, I said, please stop that right now. And they just laughed and kept playing it. Like I literally had to get up, walk over, and just shut everything off and tell them, don't do that. You need to leave.
Wow.
And it pulled me straight out of that session. I was deep into this stuff and to where I was at, and I was working on a lot of different things, and they done that, and that just tensed my body up. I could feel my shoulders tense up. I could feel my neck tense up. I mean, it was just, it took me totally completely out of the state that I was in, and the tension and stuff came in from all of that, and you know, of course there was even tension there because of this person doing these things, and you know, they're supposed to be sitting there as a sitter with me, and you know, making sure things are in control, and they decided that they were going to play games.
Yeah.
And so they weren't respecting the sacred space that needed to be there and stuff, and so that created tension as well. That person's no longer in my life.
That's great that you know you don't have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
only imagine.
we ended up having a huge falling out, not just over that, but over some other things as well. Um, but that tension and not being able to relax, I think really pulls you out of a lot of that. And like what you said, when you can really relax into it and really get to where you just let your mind and your body just calm and be at peace. And then that's where, for lack of better words, that's where the magic really happens.
Absolutely, I'm convinced of that because I think when you know, like I was explaining after having that Kundalini awakening, um, just remember one night going to bed and just totally being at peace. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
when you think about the chakras being in alignment, you're gonna, you know, because you are getting yourself to operate as an integrated whole, you know,
Yep.
as a whole person. And when we are a whole person, we are in tune. We are in sync with
Mm-hmm.
nature. We're in sync with the universe. We're not being fragmented and pulled in all these different directions. And so when the chakras are in alignment and your body is relaxed and your mind is, like I was explaining when I had that experience, the first thing that it's like I could see the room, I could see my bedroom, but it wasn't until later that I realized. So I was seeing through closed eyelid,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just had this feeling of like having an electric massage go from my crown down to my feet, and it kept going up and down for probably 10 minutes, and I didn't know what was happening. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm having this experience that's very surreal where I am in my cul-de-sac, you know, and you know, not to get too much into that, I just think that when you start working with these energies and learn that the things that you're able to do for spiritual knowledge and understanding, I think just opens up even more. I've heard that there are people who do particular styles of yoga that learn how to, awaken their Kundalini in that
Mhm.
fashion. I've gone to maybe 2 yoga sessions, and I laugh and joke because I
You cut out again.
whatsoever.
You're back.
I was just saying that I'm not very flexible, and I don't do the pretzel boy at all.
Right.
So the yoga sessions that I went to, fortunately, slow flow. But there are people who have Kundalini awakenings doing a particular style of yoga, from what I
Yeah,
understand.
there's particular styles of yoga that are designed to open up your Kundalini energies, and that's what the yogis, that practice, day in and day out, the yoga masters and stuff. That's what they're working towards, is bringing those Kundalini energies into alignment. They're working with their chakras. They're working with those energies. They're working with raising those energies. And that's why some of these yogis, you're able to see them do just crazy, crazy, insane feats. And it's because of the way that they're working with these energies. They have such a deep, deep mastery of it. And, they really, really focus in on the way that they work with this. And, being that we're over here on YouTube now, we can even go into some other things that talk around the Kundalini energies. Um, when actually this book right here, the Magdalene manuscript, the Alchemies of Horus and the Sex Magic of Isis, discusses when it's talking about the sex magic of Isis, it's talking about opening up the chakras, bringing the Kundalini energies up while you're having intercourse with your partner. And what is the key elements of the sex magic is to bring your Kundalini energies into alignment with your partner's Kundalini energies. And they call it the rising of the twin snakes in here. And well, technically it ends up being 4 snakes, technically, because both partners have 2 snakes. But you rise those energies through the chakras, and then at the moment of climax, you release that energy out through the crown chakras. And it creates, and here it talks about using this, that when you get to like the third eye, that it branches off and triggers a couple of points. Hold on, let me look these up real quick here.
While you're doing that, is that what Tantra's all about?
Tantra is
And
involved in Tantra can be involved in this. That's part of the Tantra aspect, is being able to control your climax, to being able to take those energies and pull them in to focus them, and you can use that in through rising up these energies and storing. Sometimes with Tantra, they don't go into an actual release. They store the energy and keep it within their body and
wow.
keep it within themselves. Tantra is not. I have basic knowledge of Tantra. It's not something I've gotten extremely deep into. I wanted to look for this just very specific term that they used in this book when they was talking about bringing these up. I'm probably not going to be able to find them super quick because there's a lot of stuff in this book. There's a lot of knowledge, and I've got a lot of notes in this book too. But it's talking about that when you get up to a certain point, up in the third eye, up in this region, the way it kind of branches off before you release everything, is it pulls in what they refer into here as the white drop, which is the male energy, and the red drop, which is the feminine energies. And that with the way the snakes form and the pineal gland, it creates a chalice.
Okay.
Which in some of this, I've seen in different books and stuff that I've read on this subject, they talk about that chalice is somewhat considered what might be talked about as the Holy Grail because
Okay.
of the way the energies are brought in, and that it forms the shape of a sacred grail.
Wow.
And it's right at the pineal gland, which is believed to be the what connects you to the divine. With this, what they're saying that the purpose of this, the sex magic of Isis is to strengthen your spirit body, and that when you and your partner do this and you pull these energies up into this manner and then you release them and then you maintain with each other in that field of the energies that have been released, because it forms like a magnetic field around both of you, and that if you sit in that magnetic field together, that strengthens the spirit body.
So it's another energy exchange in a sense.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because I've seen in a few different places where people will say, you know, sex stands for sacred energy exchange.
Oh,
You know, so and when you get into talking about sex, it really is an energy exchange. You know, you're transmitting energies back and forth between each other constantly during that act.
yeah.
And so when you're working with the Kundalini energies in this aspect, um, it gets into rising those up, and it's something that, you know, if you're just you know, you're just like, hey, I read this book, I want to try this with my partner, don't expect to master it in day one. You know, it's going to take some practice, and your partner's going to have to practice it with you as well too. So
You
you
know, I
know,
think all of this stuff we're talking about, I mean, opening shop, you know, and you got it mastered down. I mean, because even when you have a Reiki session, it's kind of like a quick fix to kind of get you in alignment, but you still have to maintain. It's just, you know, you can't put oil in your car one time and think your engine's going to run forever. You know, you have to maintain it.
what you mean I
So
have to put oil and stuff in my car more than once? Say what?
you'll find out when you're on the side of the road.
Oh, trust me, I know. got got to put oil in my van quite a bit. It's getting a little up in the years.
But
But
yeah, man, all of these things are just fascinating, and I think that, you know, if a person's serious about their spirituality, that they'll be, you know, what chakras are about. Like the entire talk,
you keep breaking up.
it's uh, to sum up like what I was saying, the entirety of everything. You know, we've talked about.
I
You know,
just lost you again.
it. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good. Totally stole that from the Verizon dude. But
Didn't he become the
all of
Sprint
this,
dude?
yeah, he did. But all of this boils down to learning how to work with energy. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
we've broken it down into all the different levels. But at the end of the day, it's about mastery of how energy works, how it flows, how we are made from it, and how we connect to it. You know,
Well, yeah, and it's the whole thing that, I mean, we are energetic beings. You know, we might be in, you know, a physical body, but this physical body needs energy to operate. It needs energy to function. But at the core of it all, we're spiritual creatures, and we're spiritual energy. is what really makes us up and what really makes us function at the end of the day. It's that spiritual energy. And it's an understanding of how to work with that spiritual energy. When we're talking about chakras and we're talking about Kundalini and we're talking about Reiki and we're talking about all this, at the core of it all, no matter what words or languages that we're using, what terminology we're using, we're talking about spiritual energy.
Right.
And so if we understand how to start to work with this spiritual energy from, you know, different aspects, and if you look through so many different belief systems, they talk about this energy, you know, and it's the focus of a lot of the work in the spiritual or in different modalities of spirituality is energy.
Absolutely.
Energy's talked about constantly in it. And
When
so I was just going to say, you know, getting to the core of it all is that. And if we just really learn how to work with that, and we don't necessarily nitpick over a lot of the theology or the doctrine or anything, and we just kind of take time to look and learn and study, not just from, you know, your core belief system, but from look at other belief systems and
yeah,
try to see what they have to teach and say as well.
yeah, you will find traces of all of this in all beliefs. You know,
Yeah.
one of the things that I really have an appreciation for, as you know, as far as the Bible is concerned, there's a that I really think fits well with this topic, where it basically says, and this is my paraphrase: if you operate as a spiritual person, your spirit can heal your mortal body. That's in the Bible. It says you can quicken your mortal body. You know, and when it gets into topics like the fruit of the spirit, you know, these are different energies. You know, it talks about love and joy and peace. I can talk about that on that level, or I can bring it over and talk about the condition, because it's the same stuff.
Right.
You know, it's just having an understanding and an awareness that the information is all around. And if you are conscious,
If you're what?
if you are aware and conscious enough, you will see the patterns and the connecting.
Yeah.
That it's all the same.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, you know, it I see so much where, and you know, I talk about this different times, and I don't want to feel like I don't want people to think that I'm picking on Christians, because I'm not. I'm not picking on Christians. I'm not picking on Christianity. But I've seen things where it's like, you know, you'll see certain Christian people come out and be like, oh, well, yoga is evil because it opens you up to demonic forces. It opens you up to different energies. Really? Really?
Yoga will
Or is it just really opening you up to things in a different manner than what you was taught? Is it using different terminology than what you was taught? And that's scary. And so you got to demonize it.
I believe that what will open you up to demons faster is to not love people,
Yeah.
because you will operate on a frequency and a vibration that allowing demonic, if you want to call it that, influence to be over your life. You know, so when I hear things like that, you just kind of have to grin and bear it,
Yeah.
get into a
I
debate with them.
I mean, I've heard, and like I said, I don't want to feel like I don't want to come off like I'm bashing Christians or Christianity, because I'm not. And I've been able to sit down and have some of these conversations with some Christians who have been very open to it, have been very open to the topics, have had some beautiful discussions with them in the past. But then you get a lot of them who don't take the time to really look into these things, and they want to speak negatively against it. And anyone who does that on any subject is really just, they're out of their element. But when I get down and I look at the core of energy and everything that we work in and everything we talk in, if you want to talk about Kundalini energies, if you want to talk about, let's get down to the basis of it. If you want to look into Wicca and you want to look into stuff like that and things along paganism, that gets into some of the different magic practices, all that is energy. That's all it is energy, and the way that you focus energies and the way that you direct energies. And when you talk about spell casting, it is what you speak, and what you speak is an energetic frequency that you are putting out there. We talked about that earlier. If you talk to your body in a positive manner, your body is going to respond in a positive manner. Talk to it in a negative manner, it's going to respond in a negative manner. They've done tests with plants and stuff on this, where if you talk to a plant in a positive manner and you give it that positive energy and you give it that positive influence, it's going to respond in a positive way. But if you do it in a negative manner and a negative influence, it's going to respond negatively.
That's right. And if a person, just to sum it up on what you were saying about the whole Christian thing, everything you just said, there's a scripture in the Bible that says the power of life and death is. So what's the difference between that and what you just said? Nothing.
Yeah.
It's the difference is whether you are a person who's enlightened or you continue to just remain closed off and not expand your understanding and really learn some and get you out of a system of control.
I like I've seen it said that the language of the religious is theology and doctrine, and the language of the mystics is love.
I think that's perfectly said.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, love is the highest energetic frequency that we can understand.
Exactly.
So
at this point, I don't know if the audience has any questions, but I think we.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. We got a couple minutes left in the show. We're getting near the end of wrapping it up.
I was just trying to think if there was anything else, but
you cut out again.
Oh, I was just saying that I was just thinking. I believe I covered points that I wanted to touch on, and I wasn't sure if you had.
I could ramble on. I could ramble on for hours. It might not be totally completely coherent. But yeah, I could talk on some of this stuff for quite some time, especially diving into some of the different specific aspects of energy work and stuff along those lines. But yeah, go ahead and it's show and tell time.
Yeah, before we end the show, I wanted to be sure and show this book. It's called Essential Reiki by Diane Stein. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name. It's a very good book. I'll hold it up to the camera. You can see it. Maybe take a snapshot of it. This book covers off on everything I said and then some. It gets into the history of Reiki, symbols. You could technically take this book and learn everything, that you wanted to know. But again, I would highly encourage, just from respect of a practice, right, is that you go through and get with a Reiki master and go through definitely pick up the book and get a very good understanding.
Excellent. Well, once again, no one's asked any questions. So, once again, Melvin, I do want to say, as we're getting into the closing minutes of the show, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're always welcome on the show. It's always a joy to sit down and get to have a conversation with you, no matter when or what we're talking about. It's always a pleasure. So thank you for your time and your energy that you've given us tonight, and for being here. I appreciate it, and I know the audience appreciates it as well.
It's totally my pleasure, and hopefully the audience can take away some things. And if anyone,
We lost you again on audio.
oh, I was just going to say that it was my pleasure, and if anyone goes out and gets Reiki treatment done or gets a tune, I'd love to hear about it.
Oh, absolutely. If anyone messages me or says anything in the comments, I'll make sure to let you know. Or you can just reach out to Melvin. He's on our Discord. He's in there at different times. And once again, I do want to say, as we're wrapping up, if you want to get involved and connected with Breaking Reality, down in the description, there is information for the Facebook page. There's also information for the Discord down there as well. If you want to get involved in that, this one's a little harder one for me to put out there, but I have been told I need to start saying this. If you would like to support the show, there's also links down in the description where you can do so. Please feel free to do that, but it is not needed or necessary. I'm going to continue putting out content no matter what, but it is there and available if you wish to do so. I do want to go ahead and let you guys know that on Tuesday, the 22nd, we're going to have Demian Gover with us. We are going to be continuing our series on the universal spiritual laws. Once again, I cannot remember which one that we are on. I'm going to have to look that up, actually. And then on Thursday the 24th, Michael Lee Hill will be with us, and we're going to be having a discussion about the Anunnaki. If any of you are into any of the starseed stuff or anything along that lines, we're going to be discussing the Anunnaki that night. Michael Lee Hill, I've met Michael before. He's pretty knowledgeable about the Anunnaki. I've been able to sit down and talk with him some. He's also got a bunch of stuff out there that he puts out there about the Anunnaki, and he will probably talk about some energies and frequencies as well that night, as with everything as well. And then on the 29th, Ariane Shoup is going to be with us, and we're going to be discussing animal guides and totems. And that is the shows that I have booked out for the end of June, so that's just what we have coming up. I am currently working on booking for July. So hopefully I'll get that booked out real soon because I don't have much time left. But once again, Melvin, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us tonight. It has been a pleasure having you with us, and we will definitely need to talk after the show about when you're coming on next and what we're going to be talking about next.
All right, that sounds good.
Alrighty, thank you everyone for being here tonight. I hope everyone has a good night and be blessed.
Have a good one.